This is my Ariens Path Pro snowblower. I've had this thing for about 3 years now, and I use it commercially. And when I say I use it commercially, I mean heavy commercial use. After a snowstorm, it's in use on average for about 20 hours. I'm going to try and review this from the viewpoint of a residential user rather than a commercial user because I don't think that would be completely fair for this unit. Ariens does make a commercial grade single stage snowblower, so you can go ahead and check that one out if you want. This is the Path Pro, and the first thing I'm going to do is take you over here. As you can see, this snowblower had the remote shoot option. Unfortunately, when I had to shoot in that direction, and I accidentally rammed it into a snowbank, and it turned back too far. And I tried to use the remote shoot control to get it back, where it's supposed to be, and I ended up damaging the cables. I do have new cables for it, but I just haven't gotten around to putting them on. I just turned the thing manually, as I just did a few seconds ago. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I don't think that's going to be an issue as long as you're careful with it and don't ram the thing into snowbanks. And if you do, definitely don't use the remote shoot control to try and get it back where it's supposed to be. Take the cover off, take the chute off, and do it the correct way, because you could damage that like I did, and it's not fun. So, all right, I'll take you over to the front now. I have had to replace the scraper bar once so far, and it's going to need to be replaced again because this one's getting pretty worn down. I think if you use this thing, for residential purposes, it'll probably last a couple years. The way I use it, it lasts maybe half a year, and that's one of my main gripes with this machine is the scraper blade really doesn't last that long. The ones on the Toro single-stage snowblowers last a lot longer. That one is going on 2 years now, and it's still fine. Here's the scraper blade on the Toro, which is spring-loaded, so you don't have to adjust it. And unlike the scraper blade on the Ariens single-stage, this one has a bolt going through right here, and then the same thing on the other side. It's covered in snow right now, so you can't see it, but I think that's a far superior design, personally. Other than that, yeah, this thing gets used just as heavily as that Ariens does, and the scraper blade, it does hold up a lot better in my opinion on this one, or in my experience anyway. Paddles, they're probably going to need to be replaced sometime next year. They're not quite, well, yeah, you can see that this one's kind of at the wear mark right now, and that's not bad because this is 2 years of use on these. And then here's the scraper blade on the Ariens. It's got 4 carriage bolts holding it on, and as I said before, the scraper blade on this definitely does not last as long as the one on the Toro. I like the design, the spring-loaded design of the one on the Toro more. The commercial grade Ariens single stage has a spring-loaded scraper bar that's much more like the Toro, but this one does not. It is adjustable. There are slots so you can adjust it, but it just doesn't last as long as the one on the Toro does. But my main gripe with this machine is the scraper blade. As far as the pedals are concerned, you can get 2 different types of paddles for these snowblowers. The ones they come with, which are about this thickness, and then the high wear paddles. The reason I only have one high wear paddle on here is because the other one I hit a brick and the thing broke. So I just replaced it with one of the regular ones. I didn't want to spend all the money on another set of high wear paddles, but the high wear ones obviously will last much longer. The regular ones are fine for residential use, but if you're going to use this thing commercially, then you definitely want the high wear paddles. As you can see, it's gotten dented up in some places. It's a little bent, and that's just, again, because it gets used very heavily. It did when I first got this thing, it would glide across the ground extremely smoothly. Now, after I replaced the scraper blade the first time, it did not seem to glide quite as smoothly. Really not sure why. Maybe this is bent a little where these carriage bolts go through, but I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me the way this thing gets used. Alright, here we are at the back of the unit. One thing I do like is this thing has a very nice, sturdy handlebar. And one thing I want to make clear right now is that this review of this snowblower certainly does not reflect the two-stage Ariens snowblowers. These are built quite a bit differently, obviously. So I'll have a separate review on this one. This is an Ariens Deluxe 24 that I just got. Back over to this one. So you can see we got the key. This engine is also used on the commercial grade single stage, and the only difference really is that it has a push button, or it has a starter switch rather than a key, so you don't lose the keys. But these have never fallen out. They stay in pretty tight. I did just recently have to replace the Recoil starter rope. Obviously you can buy an entire new assembly with the rope in it, but that's too expensive. So I just got new rope and got it in there. Didn't take too long, but this rope is a little thicker than the original one, so it was kind of hard to get it threaded through some of the holes. Yeah, I think that was just sort of a freak incident. I don't think that's something that would normally happen or normally be an issue, because the original pull rope was pretty high quality. It just frayed in one spot for some reason and it snapped. As you can see, this one's a little bit too long because it kind of dangles, but that's no big deal. Here's one of those things that I don't think I mentioned this yet, but this got broken when I was being a little rough with it because I lost my temper. That's not something I would really blame on Ariens. If you take care of the thing, that's not going to happen. Obviously, I could replace that whole panel, but I'm just not going to bother. It has the electric start. And of course, on these engines, you have to put the choke on to restart it, even if it's warm. For some reason, if you leave it on, if you leave the choke off and try to start it when it's warm, it won't start. Not exactly sure why they're like that, but that's how it is on this engine, and it's the same way on this bigger engine on the Ariens Deluxe. So, alright, let's open up this cover here. Here's the gas tank, electric starter back there, oil dipstick. This engine seems to be holding up quite well. It gets used for, like I said, heavy commercial use. And I haven't really had any. This engine has held up pretty well. I would definitely say it's a good engine. One problem I did have is the original. I had to replace the ignition coil and spark plug wire because the original one was arcing from the spark plug wire over to the valve cover, and it was causing the engine to run, poorly. I don't know why it did that. The first thing I did, to fix that was put electrical tape around it, but eventually I went ahead and just replaced the whole coil. I'm not sure why it did that. I think it's another one of those just sort of freak things. I don't think would normally be an issue. It was probably just nicked a little bit. Because I did get this thing. It was a customer return, and I got this thing for a really good price. So, yeah, there's been a couple of issues like that with it, but nothing really huge. Over here, this bearing retainer for this is a bearing for the auger, and this bolt would come loose very frequently. I actually lost the original one because it came off when I was using it somewhere and it got locked in the snow. So I ordered another bolt and I put thread locker on this. If you get one of these, I would highly recommend either making sure this is really tight or get thread locker. That's probably your best option because I think this will come loose even if you just use it residentially. It's got some nice big tires on it. It's got, I guess, sort of an anti-wheelie bar to protect the engine if it goes back too far. Yeah, the belt, I had to replace that after about 1 year. There was a chunk missing out of it, and it was still working just fine, but it wasn't in the best of condition, so I replaced it. And I think, again, that's another one of those things that's not going to be really that much of an issue if you just use this thing residentially. The replacement belt that I got seems to have lasted longer than the original belt, so that's a good thing. Another thing I wanted to mention real quick is if you hit something like a brick or a rock or like a big rock, this bolt right here in the middle will probably break. And I think it's supposed to do that when you hit stuff, sort of like a shear pin. But just keep that in mind. If you hit something heavy or you hit something hard with it and you realize the thing isn't working properly afterwards, it's probably because of that bolt. Definitely, if you're going to use it commercially, go for the high-wear paddle kit. But this thing just performs very well for a single stage. I was quite impressed with it when I first started using it. If you're used to, well, this is an older Toro single stage with the two-stroke engine. It's a 141cc. If you're used to those two strokes and you go over one of these, you're going to notice a lot more power. This is a 208cc 4-stroke, and it's got a lot of torque for its size. Overall, if you're a residential user, this is definitely a good snowblower. I would recommend it. The scraper blades, even though it might not last quite as long as it does on the Toro, it's a pretty cheap replacement part. I think it's like $24. And it'll last a decent amount of time if you're a residential user. If you want to use it commercially, I would say it's a pretty decent snowblower. I would maybe recommend going with the commercial grade unit because I feel like that would be maybe a little bit tougher. You won't have to replace parts quite as often, but this is certainly not a horrible option by any means. It does perform quite well. So that'll be about it for that snowblower. I'm going to be doing a review on the Ariens Deluxe pretty soon as well. So keep an eye out for that one. Thank you for watching.